an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Awaken, chapters 10, 11, and 12. In these chapters, this boat gets attacked by shark men. Shark men, everyone. And they actually seem pretty intimidating. Not like King Shark, who I know is meant to be intimidating, but just seems very silly to me. These guys are very scary. I don't like them. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Heather for commissioning this episode. Heather is here in the chat, and reminder that Heather's husband wrote this series, or it is going to be a series, right? I know that we've talked about this, Heather, forgive me, but it's been a minute since the last one. And Heather very kindly sent me some notes and also told me that there was an update to the Kindle edition to download. So those of you who are following along, I thought I would just share that information. If you have the Kindle edition, you may want to re-download it and get the refreshed. She says 3 novels and a short story anthology. Cool. So yeah, this section is mostly to do with the one mission. It's actually kind of nice how the arcs of the sort of story beats in the book so far have really lined up with my reading 50 pages at a time. It's been very convenient, I must say. But this section starts off from her fiance's POV. Now, everybody, first of all, I just have to say, her fiancé seems very sweet. He's looking for a woman who is a badass, and he knows what he wants in that respect. When we're in his POV, he admits that he's got a lot of curiosity as to what Jordan's up to all the time, and says that he has attempted to question her, but she won't get too specific. Whenever she does talk about work, she uses like fake names and doesn't even try to pretend that she's not using fake names, which was kind of compelling to me. I could have seen it as like something that she might do out of convenience to make him feel like she was sharing, that she would pretend that she was telling him something real. But I think that he is so aware of the fact that she's not meant to be sharing any sort of real information with him that, one, he would know she wasn't being loose-lipped and talking about real shit. And two, if he were to think she was doing that, he would lose respect for her. You know, so she is very clear about the fact that there's a border there that she won't cross. There were times when he wondered if Jordan was worth the effort it took to maintain a relationship with her. It seemed as if the entire world was determined to keep them apart and that every moment together was a gift. It was frustrating and made for many lonely nights, but then there were the reunions. And this is one of those things where I don't think that I could do this sort of relationship personally, because I get to feeling neglected pretty easily. And so, you know, my ego would demand that I be with somebody more consistently. However, I could see it being really good for the like health of the relationship to have these long moments apart so that you appreciate one another more. Because you do, if you live together, there is a point at which it does become a danger that you take somebody too much for granted. So I could see this actually helping to stave off that threat. But of course, it comes with its own drawbacks. You have to be really trusting of the person, first of all, that they aren't going to be seduced away from you, either because they are, you know, somebody that maybe needs an eye kept on them, maybe does have a big ego and a person nearby is flattering them, or maybe just because they're horny and someone happened to be nearby and they just wanted to get off, you know? So you need that level of trust. And then also there is the possibility of simply just growing apart, because people continue to change and grow. And if you're not together while that's happening, there may come a day where you sit down to your reunion and realize that you don't have anything in common anymore or anything left to talk about. So I could really see the advantages here, but I just, for the kind of person I am, I don't think they would really work for me. Though she would never talk about what she was doing, she would mention how frustrating Mr. Blue had been because he refused to listen to reason, or how Ms. Green was very friendly and helpful when Jordan was attempting to find a seat on an airplane. I am dying to know what that's about. Like, obviously finding a seat on an airplane has to be an analogy, or it has to be just sort of, her playing a little bit with an actual situation. But what was it? What was the situation that caused her to talk about, like, finding a seat on an airplane? I'm dying. Despite his best efforts, Brian was unable to find out exactly what his fiancée did for the government. All his sources could ever learn is that she was a security analyst, though details of what her job required were never available. So that I also found pretty interesting, that Brian didn't just ask her and not get a response. He is much more determined than that, and he went through his own channels and was equally unable to find anything. So there's a part of me that is kind of like, well, it's not super respectful of her boundaries, sir. And yet, I definitely would do that too, right? Like, if you're with somebody and you're about to marry them and you think that you can get some information that maybe they're either unwilling to share, or perhaps they're under constraint and they can't share it, but you finding out about it wouldn't necessarily be explicitly frowned upon, and you feel like that's a loophole that you can exploit. Yeah, I'd probably do that too if I had, like, the resources that he has. He never admitted that every news story with a woman's body showing up in a ditch or park set him on edge until he heard from Jordan. Despite all the stress of the unknown when she was gone, when he and Jordan were together, life was better than it had been with anyone else. So that I really appreciated too, that he, like, worries for her safety and constantly is like, oh God, is she going to turn up dead? And then just the simplicity of, are things better when they're around than when you are apart? And that's the kind of thing that sounds overly simplistic in the moment. But I think when we try and overcomplicate relationships, we are just rationalizing things to ourselves. You should be in a partnership with somebody because they bring something to your life, and you feel better with them in your life than you do without. It really is that simple. And we want to pretend that it's, like, more complicated than that, because leaving behind something that is no longer serving you is difficult and uncomfortable. And we like to pretend that there are other reasons to stay together. Now, look, there are actual practical reasons. Leaving somebody when you don't have the money to live on your own, as I well know, is not easy. I was able to do it because I had a mother with a guest room that I could go crash in. A lot of people don't have that kind of luxury, but I'm talking about the emotional and, like, psychological benefits of leaving. I think people choose a short term for the sacrifice of the long term. And if somebody isn't making you happy more often than they're making you sad, get out. That's it. That's it. I really do think that's the equation, and that's all there is to it. So I think he's on the right track here. And they're talking about having a winter wedding, and she is thinking to herself, when we go to her POV later, about how she knows his family is going to want a big splashy event. So she's going to have to capitulate to it, and how much time it's going to take to put it all together, and that she's going to be leaning heavily on her sisters and her mother and Brian's mother for the planning of it. And I have to admit, I'm planning my wedding right now, and I am a very particular, there's a very particular vision I have in mind for some of the things. I couldn't turn that over because I am so exacting in what I want. That said, there are times when I wish I didn't care and had these kinds of people in my life and I could just hand it over, because it is such an overwhelming amount of work, and I'm not even, it's just a lot. So there was definitely a part of me that, she's not super into the big wedding. She's doing it for him and his family, and she's trying to smooth things over with her relationship with his mother, who she knows doesn't really like her that much. Smart, I approve of all of these tactics. And if you don't actually give a shit, which she clearly doesn't in a lot of ways, that's the way to go. Just give up your control. Give as much effort as you need to make it clear that this is an important day for you and that you love him and that the meaning behind everything is still very important. And otherwise, step back and let them do it, babe. They'll love it and you don't have to think about it. Good for you. So this is when they have to ring off, and his secretary comes in. Lena is obviously trying to snag Brian for herself. She's not even subtle about it. This is the one scene that didn't hit for me because, in my opinion, Brian is way too oblivious. I don't see a man with this kind of education and probably experience in dating and life who is meant to be in a sort of diplomatic position, which requires a lot of reading between the lines and picking up of nuance of body language and choice of words. She was being so obvious here. The fact that he didn't get it, I was just kind of like, you can't be that good at your job then, guy, because she was practically throwing herself at you. Like, she wasn't looking at you. She had her back to you, but everything she said, she was basically like, well, I just don't think that you guys are a good match because you really need somebody who's constantly by your side and, knows how to make your tea exactly the way that you like it. Like that kind of, let's see, here it is. You should try to consider your parents' position. They're concerned you're marrying a woman who's much younger than you, who's stubborn and willful and very open with her opinions. This same woman is also gone at least 6 months out of the year. And I was just like, stubborn and willful and open with her opinions. Are you Victorian? What is your deal? And specifically, open with her opinions. You're this dude's secretary. Now, granted, they're meant to have been friends before any of this, but nevertheless, you're awfully free with your opinions too, Miss Lena. What are you talking about? Acting as if you're so retiring and you would never venture to outstep your boundary. Shut the fuck up. You're out here telling him he's about to marry the wrong woman. Like, get in your lane, dodo. As long as you're happy, Brian. Oh, shut up. You suck. I love this. One who will be there for you every night and who will know her place when she's amongst people who care about such things. I hate you. Heather says, my feeling, R.E. Lena, is that Brian is being willfully obtuse. I think that's how I meant to read it, Heather. But I wish there was a little bit of an inkling that, because we're in his head at the moment, that he understood more of it. It's like there's so little about what he is thinking in the scene itself after the point when she walks in. We just get the way he feels about Jordan while he's talking to Jordan. And there's a lot of the inner monologue and him, you know, at one point she suggests eloping, and he stops and thinks about that for a lot. And we get that whole, like, him spooling through what could happen and the consequences of that. But once Lena comes in, there's very little of that kind of reflection in his thoughts. So it's not clear to me that he sees it and is just trying to ignore it or not feed into it. All I get is his verbal responses, which are very to the point. And I'm hoping that I am not going to acknowledge it because I'm just going to focus on the fact that you think I need this kind of woman. And I'm just going to say, that's not what I want, and hope that you get it. But I just would have liked a little bit of Brian being like, you know, he just, you know, knew that he was going to have to nip this in the bud. It wasn't the first time she'd brought this up, and he needed her to be able to deal with the fucking marriage that was definitely happening in a few months kind of thing. So, yeah, and I appreciate, too, later on it is said, Lena was as opinionated as Jordan was, even if she was better at keeping those opinions to herself. And I was like, is she? I mean, maybe the like, when she's able to do that is meant to be around other people, and she just doesn't bother keeping it to herself with Brian because they have that kind of relationship with one another. But she does seem very... she seems very forward here. And there's a moment where he thinks back on, because there's, like, once she leaves, where is it? The two women were similar in many respects, and both of them were definitely used to being the alpha female in their respective careers. Maybe that's the problem, Brian considered. So this is the point where I don't feel like, if he's being willfully obtuse, he wouldn't be like, I can't figure out what the problem is. Maybe it's this thing. It does genuinely seem like he doesn't get it, you know? He comes in apparently like years ago on the two of them in a face-off in his office, and neither of them will tell him what happened. And he says at the time he'd assumed it was because Jordan's unexpected visit had derailed the carefully planned schedule Lena always kept for him. Brian had casually canceled all of his appointments for the day and took Jordan out on the town. It took a full 3 days for the icy demeanor Lena wore to melt. Brian had apologized for putting Lena in the position of explaining his sudden disappearance, and it seemed to mollify her, though the subject of Jordan had been a sore point ever since. And I really want to know, because I do not think it was, I canceled all the appointments and she put so much work into me scheduling. That's definitely not it. I don't know if it's the fact that he has never canceled plans to take out another girl, and the fact that he was willing to do that was a clear signal to Lena that he was serious about Jordan when he hadn't been about the other women he was seeing. Because, you know, if you know somebody well enough, you can see the signs of them doing something that's very uncharacteristic, which signals increased danger. And I could see that maybe being what happened with her. And prior to this, being able to roll with him dating other women because none of it ever felt like it was going to come to anything, and she was comfortable that eventually he would see her, you know. So anyway, Heather says, I think that's the case. He was a bit of a cad prior to Jordan. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. She was just sort of expecting him to not have time for her, and then he not only cancels everything, but is like, oh, let's go out, baby! So then we cut to Jordan's POV, and they had had some hard drinking the night before for her graduation ceremony. And it was enough that even she, with her, like, in her heightened metabolism and everything, is still feeling kind of buzzed. She goes into the, like, sort of common room where they had been drinking the night before, and she finds Douglas with his head on the table and covers him with a blanket, which is sort of precious. I don't know why, but I keep picturing Douglas as Hugh Jackman. I don't know where that came from, but it's been in my head. I don't have that all, like, when I'm reading something, I don't have every character in mind as an actor or any, like, specific image. But sometimes that'll happen with particular characters. An actor will come to mind, and that's just, they lodge in there. And even if that doesn't exactly line up with whatever was described, it's still how I see them. So he's Hugh Jack. There's a podcast I listen to where they call him Huge Act Man. So that's how I think of Hugh Jackman from now on. So Douglas is now Huge Act Man. So she goes and tucks him in because he really, like, got fucked up. And he's also got such a heightened metabolism and just is a massive dude. He's able to drink a lot more than everybody else anyway. But he is still sleeping it off. And here comes fucking Briar, which it's very unfortunate that Briar's name is spelled so close to Brian's, her fiance's, because I was like, for a second, I was like, wait, what? And then, oh, right, okay. I have to give, I have to give your husband some credit here, Heather, for using a word that I had never heard before. Lubriciously. Did you know this? Did you know this, guys? He smiled at Jordan lubriciously and lowered his voice. Lubriciously, according to the dictionary, offensively displaying or intended to arouse sexual desire. Second definition, smooth and slippery with oil or a similar substance. Oh, I love that those are both the definition for this word. That's just so, you know, it's like calling somebody oily and how many ways that can be interpreted. It's like the similar thing. I have never heard it before. It makes sense. Lube, you know, but I came across that word and I was like, wait, what? I don't know what that is. I mean, I looked it up. I was like, ooh, nice usage. So this dude attempts to rape her, basically. And he tries to punch her at one point, and all she does is step out of the way because Jordan is like, she's a little bit, I don't want to say too considerate. I don't think too considerate is really fair because she's considering her whole team and what this guy can do. However, she considers breaking his hand when he reaches for her. And when she thinks about it, she's like, ooh, but he's a thief and he really needs his hands. That's not probably the best way to handle this. And I was like, man, look, I know that it will screw you as well as everybody else if this guy doesn't have full access to his faculties. But I just want you to break his hand so bad anyway. There's other things you could break, you know, like break a pinky. He could have the whole rest of his hand functioning, but just break the pinky. You know, that's fine. Splint it, done. But no. This is when he really begins to go off. You fucking cunt think you're too good for me? I've fucked nearly every bitch in this place, which she says doesn't speak very highly of them, but I couldn't help but interpret as, so you've probably raped multiple women. Cool. So he snarls incoherently, lunges for her, his fingers grasping for her throat, and she sidesteps him and he slams into the wall. Young's arm folded under him and he crashed face first. The impact, combined with the alcohol, robbed him of his senses. He slid down the wall and landed on the floor, a crumpled, insensate mess, which honestly is amazing. I enjoy him knocking himself out. I enjoy that he just slides down the wall in what I imagine as a very undignified, not only the movement, but also like a mild sort of squeaking sound, like a squeegee as he slides down, you know. I enjoy all of the humiliation of this. I'm here for it. And even then, Jordan like checks that he's still breathing and carries him over to a couch. And I was just like, he doesn't deserve any of this, but fine. Heather says, this reminds me of the video where people test their cats by gently moving them towards the wall to see if they'll stop themselves with their paws or just face plant into the wall. I don't think I've seen those videos, Heather, but that's one of those things that I'm like, I think I would laugh and also be like, oh, because the poor cat, you know. Oh, she shared a link. All right, I'm going to have to remember to click that after this is over and remind me. But yeah, different cats have very different ways of coping with obstacles. My Arya will jump over anything because she's lithe and graceful. And Ripley is like a cannonball and does not know how to redirect herself in any way. Whatever direction she's heading, she's going to get to wherever, even if there's something in the way, even if things have changed, and God help you. So she is, then we go into chapter 11 and she is on the ship here. And I enjoy the relationship that she has with Douglas, where it's like he's perfectly aware that she's off limits, but there's still this like heavy flirtation going on between the two of them, and he knows that it's nothing, but he still clearly enjoys the sort of back and forth. I've been, around dudes like this, and it's always one of those things where it's like, look, they know that they're not going to get anywhere with me, but if I were to let them get somewhere with me, they'd absolutely go for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not under the impression that they're faking it. They're 100% genuinely interested, but they just want a little something for amusement, even if they can't actually have me. And I'm not averse to amusement, so sure, I'm too old for it now because it takes a kind of like energy that I just don't fucking have anymore. But there have been many times in my life where I have been okay with this sort of behavior. So there's a lot of white noise because of this massive ship. The ship itself, like its engine makes noise, the movement of all of the metal makes noise, all of the shipping containers on board shifting and moving make noise. Then there's the wind, then there's the water. Like everything is almost overwhelming, and it's only her sort of new training that helps her to refocus her senses, that keeps her from having to wear those earplugs that dampen noise. So her and Douglas are sort of, cracking wise, and we get a bit of a summary of everybody who's on the ship. There's Sergeant William Douglas, Brady Lincoln, and Tristan Shaw. So I like the description of Douglas. He was professional, and his sense of when or when not to crack wise was impeccable. This is one of those things that I am not sure I have yet mastered. I would like to think I have, but I assume many people would disagree with my assertions at different times. But yeah, that is the kind of thing that I value also in other people. I love being able to joke around, but you had better be able to get fucking serious when you need to. Like, if you can't multitask, what good are you to me? Then there's Lincoln. He made it clear he wasn't going to buy into Jordan's skills until she had proven them on a real operation. The man was hyper-competitive, and she beat him in sharpshooting. He had previously been the best before she arrived, and now he's just trying to beat her at everything. Then Shaw, surprisingly approachable, generally quiet. He was able to hold his own with Douglas when it came to charm, though his was more of what Jordan thought of to be dark and mysterious. Shaw's smile was also easy to like and very genuine. Much like Douglas, he could switch back to the serious professional at the drop of a hat. So they're chit-chatting, flirting back and forth, and then all of a sudden, she catches a scent. And this is wild. So first of all, guys, it only took a moment for Jordan to parse the scent out from the other background aromas, and immediately she remembered her early tests in Dr. Linden's lab. Carcharodon carcharias, she muttered. And I saw this and immediately pictured what's-his-face from Jaws. Carcharodon carcharias, it's a great white! And yeah, immediately she follows it up with sharks, great white sharks. I smell several. And this fucking dude just drops out of nowhere. She has her gun out in an instant and has shoved Douglas out of the way and pulled the trigger. These shots do fucking nothing. Like, it's a complete waste of ammunition. I don't know if they have any effect whatsoever. Like, does it cause pain? Because it doesn't seem to even cause pain. You know, it's one thing when you've got somebody who's wearing like a bulletproof vest. There's still the incredible pain of impact that can break ribs. You know, it's not a complete... Wearing a vest doesn't save you from anything other than being pierced and death. It's still... You can get very badly injured from being shot, even with a vest. But I'm getting the impression that these bullets don't do even that much, because they shoot and unload whole clips at these dudes. And it's not until Douglas actually begins to beat one of them with his bare hands that there seems to be any material effect of any kind. So, yeah, the creature was the most horrifying thing Jordan had ever seen. It stood nearly 2.5 meters tall, about 8'2", for those who are interested. I translated it. Had the sort of defined muscle that only a bodybuilder or professional wrestler had. Its smooth, wet skin was gray with white running along the underside of its snout and the front of its neck. Each hand had 5 webbed fingers that ended in black claws that were easily 3 inches long, and the creature's bare feet were similarly equipped. Which, I don't know why. Its hands being webbed were one thing, but realizing that it had like webbed toes made me giggle a lot, and I don't, like, it's not appropriate, but that just for some reason took it over the edge for me and I started laughing. The creature's mouth formed an unnatural grin filled with serrated triangle teeth, and the cold gold-on black eyes contained the promise of violence and death. Unlike a shark, the eyes of the monster before her gleamed with intelligence-driven intent. I liked that being sort of the capper on everything, is that it has the like creepy eyes of a shark, but with an intelligence to them that definitely makes them much more threatening, you know. And on top of all of this, it's got a suit that's got harnesses and all kinds of equipment on it. It's ready for fucking action. And Jordan, this fight is one of those that I really enjoy seeing on the big screen. Nothing that Jordan does here is completely outlandish. It's just that she's so fast and has such dexterity. But she's, you know, she's not making like vertical 30-foot leaps, although she probably could. I actually don't know that she couldn't. But there's something to her that I keep sort of thinking, despite the fact that she actually has supernatural abilities, I keep thinking of Black Widow, where she just has a fighting ability that far outstrips what a regular person would have. Now, like I said, Black Widow doesn't have actual superpowers, and Jordan does. So it would definitely be on another level. But I just sort of think of it like that, where she does the kinds of fighting and the kinds of stunts that only happen in movies with the help of cranes and you know, CGI and effects. So that's kind of fun. I just enjoyed like the various flips and jumping up with like just momentum that she does. She squeezed the triggers of the weapon smoothly and emptied the last 4 shots from each weapon into its head and shoulders. The creature let out an enraged roar that Jordan could feel in her bones, but once again, the copper-jacketed hollow points did nothing to it. So, here comes Douglas. And Douglas just pummels these guys. Now, don't get me wrong. Douglas himself gets pummeled. Badly. He's fine. I had a moment where I kind of wondered if he wasn't going to die, because I didn't fully understand what the deal was with how much he could take. And he winds up he's fine. But there was a moment there where I was like, oh my God, did he fucking die? So she sends off with a microphone the code black warning. Let's see. Fuck this. We do this the old-fashioned way, Douglas said calmly, and gave the creature a cocky smile as it turned to face him. As the agent closed the distance, the shark creature swung a clawed hand at his chest, but the smaller man nimbly ducked under it. When he came up, he landed a vicious uppercut against the underside of the protruding jaw, which slammed the creature back into the cargo container. Like a prize fighter, Douglas pummeled the creature on the side of the head with 3 more punches that drove it back into the container's wall even deeper. Without pause, the shorter man drove his fists into the creature's stomach and sides, each blow turning the muscle and cartilage beneath the armored skin into jelly. Yikes. I really do enjoy the dent being formed in the cargo container. That's very fun to me. So, let's see. Heather says a vest still transmits hydrokinetic shock. Hydrokinetic. I always thought hydro meant water. What does that mean, Heather? Let me know. He definitely gets his bell rung pretty good. I forgot. I like that saying. Ring his bell. So this is when the alarm starts to go off, this like klaxon. And she has to take her transmitters out of her ears because it's just too much. The fight continues with other shark dudes showing up. Oh, Heather says hydrokinetics, it sends shockwaves through the soft / liquidy parts of your body. Ew, gross. So this dude, he gets downed, but it's unclear if he's dead. I think that he's just left for dead and winds up being drowned. Because later on, when we go to Constantine, he says you lost 2 of your guys. They only got the body of the one that she killed with the knife through the eye. But this one isn't that one. Right? Right. I'm pretty sure. Now I'm realizing that I maybe lost track. But I think that's true. So I'm going to sort of jump through, but there's one spot that I did find really funny. There's a new one, and Douglas catches him in the kneecap with this, like, blow. There was a sound of crushing flesh, and the creature spun up in the air, head over heels, flying back and over the Dunleavy's railing. Douglas grinned at Jordan and winked playfully just as another of the attackers landed on the deck beside him. Bugger. I really like that bit. For a moment, he's just like, haha, how about that? And then there's a new one. He's like, God damn it. And this is the one where she gets him in the eye, I think. Yeah. So, and he says something about like, I'm gonna get you, you limey bitch, and then, your blood smells good. I think I'll take a taste. Too bad I don't have time to play with you, little girl. And she's just like, would you shut the fuck up? Which, honestly, that's the energy. True. Just stop talking, for Christ's sake. Here's the part that I was talking about. The third shark creature grabbed Douglas by his shoulder and used its other hand to smash the man in the face. Unlike Jordan, Douglas's body adapted to his enhanced strength not with regenerative ability and mild skeletal strengthening, but with dermal resistance and extensive micro-reinforcement of the bones, using dense layering. It was the only way his body could support the extreme weights he could lift without folding in on itself. It also saved his life as the creature repeatedly landed punch after punch against Douglas's face. I really appreciated that explanation. I think that he mentioned this when she first meets him and he's using that like massive machine, but I appreciated the reminder of what the difference is in why that each of them, they both are able to get out of it without too many injuries, but the way that they do so is really different. And also I appreciate any time that there's a bit of like science behind the reasoning for a power, you know what I mean? That's something that in the Dresden Files, he's very fond, Jim Butcher, who writes that, of having the magic be based as much as possible in sort of the principles of physics, where if you summon heat, that means that you have to pull heat out of the atmosphere around you, which will leave things ice cold or frozen, because the heat has to come from somewhere. You're sourcing it out of your environment. And similarly, when he is like talking about being able to lift extremely heavy objects because he has some new abilities, he's like, however, my muscles may be able to lift, but that doesn't mean that my skeletal system will be able to continue to support the weight of a car above my head. So it's not like I can just go around doing whatever anymore, you know, like, and I like when there's those caveats to let me know, can that be done? If not, why? If yes, why? I just need to know. You know how I am, you guys. I want things to have rules. It helps everything feel more grounded and real. God, I'm such a fucking nerd. Whenever I hear myself, I just like rules. Ugh, of course you do, you fucking nerd. Okay, so this is the moment when she kills it, hops off its shoulders, and she's just like, we're going to take this. And I was like, at first, what? Why? And then she's like, well, the ship is sinking and we want to study it. And I was like, oh, good call. Yeah, that would be really good to know. Yes, this is why you're at the job and I'm not. Yes, that's why. So there's an impact. The ship is clearly sinking. They have to get the fuck off. And Jordan expresses later on some real regret over the fact that they basically have to like leave everybody to find their own way out. They can't save everybody. And the majority get off, but plenty don't. And it's just a bummer, you know. It's also funny because when she's watching the news reports about it, she thinks to herself, like, every one of those men was a brother or a father or a husband. And it's weird to hear men being talked about in the way that women are usually, where it's like, she's somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's wife. That's always how we're talked about. But you don't hear men talked about like that often, you know? So it's always, whenever there's that sort of reversal of language, it really helps to highlight the absurdity of the sexism inherent in certain depictions of things, you know, that it's easy to overlook until you see it done to somebody else. So this is when they manage to get off of the ship, and they are examining the body and find the little spherical camera attached to this guy's outfit. He pulls the antenna off. Who was it? The colonel. He examined it a moment before he pulled a small antenna off and tucked both into a pouch on his gun belt, just to make sure that it doesn't continue transmitting and giving shit away. Which is a good call. Glad that she found that. And this is the moment where she's just like talking about helping some of the other people, and they're like, we just can't. And Lincoln says, the rest of the poor bastards, the actual Marines, were ripped apart by those things. In 10 years, I've never seen that much blood, which, that sucks. I feel kind of bad for Lincoln here, you know, like, he's shown to be a super competitive, tight-ass pain, but that's a trauma he just endured, and that's rough. So she is healing her ribs, and there's this like loud popping sound as they finally reconnect, and everybody is like, what the fuck was that? And she's like, it's just my ribs self-knitting. It's fine. I actually feel way better now. So, so at this point, Jordan asks, what were we carrying that was so important that these things would sink a ship for it? Shaw watched Jordan work on the Marine for several moments, his gaze drifting to look back at a hard-eyed Douglas before he responded. Awakened criminals in cryogenic stasis, 27 of them in all. I'm guessing that's why none of the lifeboats are being attacked. They're probably offloading the cryopods before the Dunleavy goes under. Something definitely exploded beneath the ship, broke her spine. Heather, remind me, did we know that's what the cargo was? We didn't, right? That sucks. 27. And we saw what one of these, like, out of control dudes was able to do from almost a mile away, or was it more than a mile, when Jordan's going to try and snipe him? He nearly kills her from that distance with his mind. And I am not excited about, at this point, one of the criminals was able to control water at a molecular level, a hydrokinetic. Oh, look at that. There's that word, Heather. That one had killed several people during a bar fight by simply pulling every drop of water out of their bodies. The post-mortem pictures showed that his victims were little more than desiccated skin and bones. Yikes. Lyndon's notes suggested that the process was brief but painful, and it was one Jordan had no desire to experience or witness firsthand if she could help it. This is one of those things when Owen and I first started covering Avatar for the Spoil Us series, which is our like wedding fundraiser. When we reached waterbenders, I immediately was like, so can you like bend people since they're like 80% water? Is that, can you, and it turns out, spoilers, yeah, you can. It's really not a cool thing, and it's hard to do. And it takes being like at the right time of the month, pun intended, to do it for most people. But you can. And I always sort of judged myself at how quickly I jumped to that being an ability you could potentially take advantage of if you were a waterbender. I was like, it's kind of fucked up, Tosh, that that's immediately where your mind went. But evidently, I'm not the only one. And the one that I have in common, that thought, is a serial killer. So that's cool. Great. So at this point, they're sort of arguing with Shaw about the fact that if they had fucking known, then maybe they could have rigged those cryopods so that they could blow them up and blow up the guys who were trying to steal them. And it's a real back and forth between Lincoln and Shaw. I think it's Lincoln here. We could have fragged the lot of them and the blighters that just killed a platoon of our men, Lincoln responded in an irritated voice. Yeah, it's him. Shaw's tone changed, easily switching from comrade to commander. That's enough. This isn't the first operation we've done where secrecy was the primary defense. I'm more concerned we have a leak somewhere. And I'm like, look, I totally agree that the leak is a major problem that you do need to deal with, but I'm not sure that's actually a higher priority now that these dudes have been stolen. Like, if you were able to do something, then sure. But they've been got now, and I feel like that is the real thing you need to be worried about. The leak, I mean, I don't know what other shit you've got up your sleeve. Maybe there are other things that could be worse. But this feels about as bad as it's going to get, in my opinion. Maybe I'm just, I don't know, a little bit too optimistic there. And they were being brought to the Block, a supermax prison in the Arctic. And I love when Douglas is like, I hope the fucking thing isn't underwater. Is it underwater? And Shaw has to genuinely be like, I don't know. And here's a line that I like too. Douglas says, my head still feels like it was tap danced on by Godzilla, which I did find very evocative and funny. So then we go to chapter 12. And this is when we're watching the videos of both, it's videos, I'm assuming, from the Sharkmen's like cameras that are on their belts or their suits, whatever it is. But Constantine is watching how Jordan fights and basically has like heart eyes the whole time. And it's just like, oh my God, look at how graceful and absolutely fucking ruthless she is. She is like a complete predator. Oh my God. She would be perfect. And at one point pauses because her face is showing, and he was like, look at her beautiful eyes. Oh my God. And I was just like, you need to get a hold of yourself, sir. And eventually, like, one of his dudes, when he's having the conversation, says the same thing, like, oh, what? So you want to fuck her? And so that's when I was like, look, all the advantages he's citing are very genuine. And I don't doubt that he would have a lot of, like, that would be very helpful to him. But your second in command guy is not as wrong as you're trying to pretend he is. It definitely is like 80% about how you want to fuck her. Like, let's just be real, dude. Okay. So yeah, I couldn't help Misha before that bitch killed him, and Dmitri looked dead too. I thought it best we carry out the mission, so I went to oversee Team 2, a voice said in Russian from behind Trechek. And this dude is trying to be cool, but Trechek can tell he's feeling nervous about the reception he's going to get when he, you know, failed like this and lost a couple dudes. And Trechek basically is like, you just wanted to save yourself. And there's a part of me that's like, I mean, I'm not mad at him for that, you know, like, sure, but yeah, it's fine. Arkady Maliev stood stiffly with his hands behind his back and scowl on his face. He was the same age as Trechek, nearly 50, but like his master, he appeared to be in his late 20s. Arkady stood a full 3 inches shorter than Trechek himself, but his body was much bulkier, and the $3,000 suit he wore did nothing to hide his size. So he essentially asks if he can be the one to slowly kill Jordan. And Trechek's like, kill her? No. We're going to make her one of us. And he gets really mad. First, like, just, you want to fuck her. We don't, you know, that's all this is about. 2, I can't believe that you would bring a woman into, like, we've already got foreigners, and that's bad enough. And we're supposed to be a brotherhood, and essentially saying that he's weakening the blood. Really, he goes off, like, in a way that he gets what he deserved on that, because this guy is clearly your commander, and you just cannot talk to a commander like this. I mean, I'm not in the fucking army, and even I can tell you don't do that. Not that this is the army, but you get what I mean. A military situation. And he says right into Arkady's face, weakness? You speak of weakness, but why is it that you returned without 2 of our own, Dmitri made it to the extraction point on his by himself, half alive. You're afraid of this woman, this weak woman? Why didn't you bring me her head and the head of her associates? Do not speak to me of weak blood. Do as I say and keep your place as my lieutenant. Prove to me that you still have value. And I was like, I mean, he's 100% correct. You know, this is the way to handle somebody like this. You can't let somebody talk to you like that when you're in charge, especially people with these kinds of strengths. No. And especially as we find out, this guy is like the source. He's the one that's there. I guess the insinuation is they're drinking his blood, and that's turning them into this, which that seems to be the first awakened person that they have ever heard of who has that kind of effect on people. Heather says, fun fact, Arkady was Vlad in New Jersey. I was just about to ask if Misha was Vlad. Okay, so Arkady was Vlad. Cool. So, yeah, he has this moment where he mentally connects with all of his men and just sort of shares this emotional compassion over the death of one of their brothers because they take it very seriously. And it's not something that he does often, but he recognizes that using emotion in this way helps to bond them all even more and get them all like the more determined to take vengeance in the end, you know? And it ends with him picking up the phone and calling Aunt Galena. Misha is gone. Do we know Aunt Galena, Heather? Have we seen that name before? It rings a bell, but I can't remember if that's like, you know, I don't know if that's even from this or if that name was in something else that I'm reading. So Heather says, no, she's not in the books. Okay, cool. Just want to double check. So then we go to Jordan, and there's a bunch of monitors that are all showing different things. There's a salvage operation going on around where the ship sank. There's the autopsy of the humanoid shark figure, BBC and CNN coverage of the ship going down and the attack. But they're like sort of approaching of course they are. They're approaching the reporting as if to say it was like a terrorist attack. And in the end, they're all pretty certain they're going to frame it. And by they, I mean the government is going to frame it as a accident, that it won't be a terrorist attack by the time we're done. Although I have no doubt there will be a million YouTube channels with really wild conspiracy theories, and none of them are going to be as weird as the truth. So at this point, we have basically a series of presentations as everybody puts forth what information they have. So let's see. We first have Shaw. McIntyre. My bad. Gentleman and lady, we'll cut to the chase. We've lost possession of 27 exceptionally dangerous awakened humans. And a full platoon of Marines sacrificed their lives, save one, as did 6 crewmen from the merchant vessel Dunleavy, including her captain and first officer. And everybody takes that very seriously. They'd all been sort of like joking around, but this being mentioned really sort of brings everybody back into solemnity pretty quickly. Also, how many is in a platoon? I'm curious. I imagine 20, but I don't know that actually. I just pulled that number out. So let's see. The attackers, by all reports, were beings like this. And obviously the Shark Man is up there. Organized, armed, carrying state-of-the-art equipment. They split into 2-man elements and took the wheelhouse, engineering, fore and aft decks. And then there's the mention about how their signals got jammed. And Shaw was able to get a code black out right before they did that, which probably saved them. Because, you know, the way the timing went down, there just wasn't time to go out and, like, kill survivors and whatnot. As well as the fact that the ship was sinking, of course, but that's a whole other thing. So, during the engagement, Agent Law and Sergeant Douglas were able to kill a single attacker, as well as recover the body for examination. Lieutenant Shaw has run a preliminary check on the captured equipment. The director looked in the direction of Colonel Shaw's younger brother, Lieutenant Eric Shaw, whom everyone called Chance, for his well-known love of gambling as well as unconscious ability to manipulate probabilities, which is a pretty wild skill to have. And tech is like his specialty. So he gets up and he's showing them a variety of pieces of equipment that these guys were carrying and what they do. The really sophisticated first camera. Then there's something that like looks like a dildo. And of course, Breyer can't help making fucking jokes about it. But that turns out to be something that like quickly downloads and uploads information. And then one of them is a electromagnetic halo field, which keeps them from being detected via their bioelectric field, which again is really, it's like custom, incredibly sophisticated equipment. And they're all beginning to realize all of this, combined with the fact that they were probably in a submarine, means that they have an enormous amount of money behind them and they just have no idea where that could be coming from. Jordan suggests that they were maybe renting the sub, but like with everything else, I think they're going to have to come to the conclusion that it was owned. So, let's see. Heather says a platoon is typically made up of 3 squads of 9. So, 27. Oh my God. Guys, I'm so bad at math. I remember when my brain used to be agile. Whatever happened to me? So, this is when Briar uses his ability. And Briar is such a fucking slimy character. Like, he goes up there and what he can do is read objects. And it's not rare to be able to do that. But it's rare to be able to first go back as far as he can with it, which is several days, and also make sense out of it all so that you can actually piece together what actually happened. And as he's doing this, he says, we're in the shite now, boys and girls, really clearly being like, this shit is no good. But also wanting to get everybody's attention and then very quickly being like, wait, let me finish. Because he likes fucking having everybody by the balls because he's just a petty little man. But his ability is super valuable, like you can understand why they tolerate his bullshit because they're getting some good information off of this. These guys are some sort of merc unit. Everyone I saw was Russian, able to turn into those things. There were maybe 30 or 40. There were names or nicknames, but not much. A description of a mean-looking bloke who looked like Zidane from Real Madrid, which I did look up what that guy looked like, and I appreciate that, just being like, he looked like this person that I can go and find. I appreciate that. There's something very easy about that. And they keep asking him questions, and he's being weirdly evasive until somebody sort of gets in his face and is like, tell us what you fucking saw, dude. Because he makes it clear that, there was only a little bit of conversation in which they just talked about women and sports, and they're like, bullshit. And he tries to say, I don't know that much Russian. And Jordan's like, you never said they were even speaking Russian. And he's like, well, it just sort of slipped my mind. And finally, somebody's like, dude, you have to fucking tell us. Stop it. And he finally admits that he saw a tattoo that was very distinctive. A black shark with arms and legs holding a small shovel in one hand and a trident in the other. Which I have to admit sounds like the goofiest tattoo. I am extremely curious to see a version of this that doesn't look hilarious. And maybe it does. Maybe it just is hilarious. And that's part of why it sort of does. It flies under the radar, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Clone High, but I know that they're going to be revamping it. But there's an episode where I think Joan of Arc shares one of her secret shames, which is a tattoo that she got of a dolphin with sunglasses on that says, "What's up?" And I just kept thinking about that. And at this point, he gets interrupted by Lyndon coming in and being like, so this is super exciting. Due to my incredible science, I can tell that this person was not born an awakened human being. This was done to them. Rewritten fairly recently, in the last couple of years. And everybody in the room, Lyndon is just like, this is so cool. You don't even know. And everybody else is like, yeah, we do fucking know. And it's a nightmare, dude. What? He is just, all he can think about is the actual science of it. And everyone else is like, oh, Christ, this is fucked now. And he does not seem to step back and appreciate the full consequences of this, which is just how science fucking works a lot of the time. Let's be perfectly honest. But yeah, so he is just over here kind of he's delighted and everyone else is horrified. And it takes a minute before eventually he because he tries to say, all of you could be turned into one of these. And it seems like it would be probably, let's see, here it is. You would gain the ability to function at great depths, swim at incredible speeds, smell a single drop of blood in an ocean of water, massive strength increase, as well as what I believe is the ability to see in the electromagnetic spectrum, which is wild. The ability is much like sonar imaging. My initial examination suggests that this functions like a very advanced electroreceptor, very complex in nature and layered like the human brain. And physically, they surpass humanity on every level, and mentally, they are on par. Simply put, they are an apex predator on both land and sea. I dare say finding the source creature is vital. The being that was born with these abilities naturally has learned they can pass them on. It's as important as locating these missing stocks of genetic material, the prisoners, the medical equipment. One could cause all sorts of trouble with an army of these creatures, especially if they carried forward any existing awakened abilities. It could mean the end of humanity or the beginning of a new humanity. Dun dun dun! So that is the end of chapter 12. So yeah, it's gonna get intense. I am very interested to see if any of these spooky awakens get turned into sharkmen. Because I kind of want to see it. I know it's like bad news and everything, but also I want to see it. Sounds entertaining. So I'm over time. I have to wrap up. But thank you again very much to Heather for commissioning this episode and for hanging out in the chat and feeding me all kinds of information. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys are enjoying the coverage. And I will be seeing you again pretty soon, actually, with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.